Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser Postmatch podcast. It's our regular crew over here. We got Gally and Bickler. What's going on, gentlemen?
Another great win.
Yes, it is. It was a bit nervier than I would like it to be, and my probably doctor would like it to be, but not a lot of leaning back like we were talking with VJ in the last post match. But got the 3 points, another clean sheet, 3 goals. Some good things to see, some maybe concerning things to see as well, but we'll talk about all that. So let's start with the lineups, because I know it screwed up my fantasy football team because I had Trent and I guess he was ill, so he was taken out. So there's 3 changes in the back 3, and we kind of talked about this after the Champions League. We did expect some changes. I don't think we expected all 3 out of the 4 out of our regular starters to change in the back line. So looking at this lineup over here, what do you make of this lineup? Let's start with you, Bickler. How concerned were you when you saw 3 people change in the back?
I mean, we expected some change in the back, right? I think we all called the Tsimikas. I think we saw that come in. I think we thought maybe this was going to be the spot last week when we were talking about this is the spot we're going to see Gomez, but obviously with Gomez going midweek, he wasn't going to start here. So it makes sense for Konate to come in there. Wasn't concerned about that. Was happy not to see heavy rotation across the front 3. Midfield is the midfield we've been wanting to see. And then I was concerned when I saw Milner, just because Milner, for all his experience and all his leadership, to me has lost a lot in the last year and a half in terms of his pace. But I mean, he spent a lot of time at right back when he was at City. So, and he did a job today. He did a job.
Yeah, I think that was initial. I mean, we kind of expected this duo when we talked right after the Milan match. We said it would be probably Konate and Van Dijk based on what we saw midweek. But I think seeing Milner there was a shock. I think, Gally, you were the one who said, probably Costas would be there for Robo to rest. But I think especially with Konate being new, we kind of expected Trent to be in there. Trent is not there. But I thought, going into the game, as you watch the game, they knew Milner and Zaha would not be the best matchup in terms of pace. I thought, they kind of compensated for that extremely well on that side with Hendo and Mo as well, tracking back a lot more than usual.
Yeah, I thought Mo was great in this match. And it's not often you talk about Mo working backwards. We know he works hard, and he runs back, and he presses high, and he starts defense with Firmino and the rest of the front 3. But the idea that at times Mo was instinctively tracking back, he'd see that Milner was up the pitch. And I think at times, if he could support Trent that way, it would allow Trent to maybe not be so checked in one way or the other going forward or going back, because he'd know there's a little bit more protection. I had mentioned in the Discord channel, I didn't love Trent Alexander-Arnold being out of the game because it messed up my fantasy team too. But I thought the idea of playing a veteran like Milner and knowing that you're probably going to unleash Costas a little bit more because of it, would allow for neutralizing of Zaha and not creating that space he could run into, which would drag out Konate on his first day and his first bow. So I actually think the substitutions and the rotation that we all complain Jurgen doesn't do was a little bit forced today, but also was, tactically 100% spot on. The manager gets a 10 for today.
Yeah, I think especially knowing, making the adjustments based on the team we put out there was really good. So let's take a look at some of the specific performances. And VJ is wondering who the sexy guy in the gray kit is. But I'm wearing black. Maybe it looks gray on the screen. I don't know what the deal is there. But so Konate, what do you make of his performance, Bickler? I think that was probably the one that everybody was watching a bit closer compared to other players.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been excited to see this just because I liked what I saw from him when he was at Leipzig. I thought he was going to be a stud. I thought having not had a lot of game time under him with the current squad this year, I thought he did really, really well. He had some some good one-on-one wins. I thought he positionally was really sound in a system that's very difficult on center backs. I thought he did a really nice little mixture of Van Dijk and Matip, where he was coming up pretty high up the pitch with the ball at times, and then he hit that long diagonal to Jota in the second half, which I thought was really nice to see as well. So yeah, man, I mean, to me, all good signs that he's going to be. I think he's the future number 2. I know that's probably not a popular take. I think a lot of people still are in the Gomez camp, and Gomez obviously is very talented. It's still extremely young. But I think this buy, I think this is a buy with an eye towards the future pairing with Van Dijk.
See, I personally always put, and I think we talked about this before, I always personally put Matip as number 2. Because especially games at home against, defenses that are going to sit back, I feel like he's the best center back we have on the ball, even better than Gomez, despite, Gomez being able to play like right back and stuff like that. So to me, Matip is always number 2. So Gally, how do you line that up? Everybody's healthy, ready to go, biggest game.
If all players are healthy right now, ready to go, and rest and rotation isn't in the issue, I think Matip and Van Dijk are literally, along with Allison and then Henderson, the first 4 names on the team sheet. If everyone's healthy and ready to go, it's Matip and Van Dijk. I don't want to speak for Paul, but I think what I heard him kind of saying is he doesn't disagree. We all know he loves Matip, as he refers to him as the galloping giraffe down, as he runs through the midfield. But I think he's maybe saying in a year or two, as we move away, that this buy was to replace Gomez in the pecking order as the third option and the long-term, center back pairing. The next Matip and Van Dijk will be Van Dijk and Konate. I think it's going to take a little bit. I think we're going to see Konate and Gomez start together actually on Thursday Tuesday against Norwich if they can, and continue to let Matip rest a little more and keep rotating Van Dijk. I could be totally wrong there. But I think we're going to see a lot similar lineup to the one on our screen right now, except for maybe a new front 3. The thing that surprised me today wasn't that I expected one of the front 3 to maybe be rotated from the start, just because he seems to be doing that right now. And I could have saw Jones maybe starting and then Jota getting 30 minutes at the end instead of the first 60. Because I do think he has to be careful, because I think it's going to take a couple more weeks for Bobby to come back. And, one more injury to that front area. And, then our depth and numbers start to really get questioned. So we'll see where that goes. But all in all, I love the lineup and I love the result.
I actually thought, especially there was a shot of the bench at one point, and I saw Gomez and Phillips sitting next to each other, and I was like, this could be the duo going against Norwich, because you got to use Phillips sometime.
Yeah,
want to get Gomez more minutes. So that would be my guess, especially since Konate just went 90 minutes today. But I think, if it wasn't for Phillips, I think you're right. It would be the 2, so that, for the weekend we have Matip and Van Dijk again. But I thought Konate did good overall. But if you watch a couple of the situations, I don't know if it's not being used to the higher line and not being, used to playing with Van Dijk as much, or just worrying a little bit more just because it was his first start. There were a couple of times where he was always like a step or 2 behind Van Dijk, which kind of, people would raise their hands for offsides and they were like, nope, Konate is messing it up kind of thing. So, and it was only like a step or 2, but sometimes that comes from slightly worrying about making that mistake, trying to be ahead of the ball kind of thing. But it didn't turn out to be costly. So when we look at the game as a whole, before we kind of, because our friend David Cosgrove, Mr. Negative over here, says, is it nice that we can play rubbish and still win the game? I don't think it was the best performance, but I don't think it was rubbish either. To be fair, I thought Crystal Palace played a lot better than I expected them to play. Bickler, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Palace has been better. They've certainly looked more dangerous offensively. They're a lot less predictable than they were under previous management. Given the lineup, I think it's not surprising that Crystal Palace had a go during spurts in that game. But if you look at it, our expected goal differential was 2 points, a full 2 points higher than Crystal Palace. You got 2 times as many shots on, 2 times as many chances created, 4 times as many big chances created. So, I mean, to say that we played poorly, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, there were certainly moments in that game where we looked vulnerable, but I mean, if you looked at that lineup before the game, that would probably be expected.
I think it would have been unfair to expect him to play. There were some sloppy passes and stuff here and there, but with so many changes in the lineup, I thought that was kind of normal. I thought the front three looked great, especially Mo and Mane. And BJ wants to talk about Salah's 24-pack. And yeah, that yellow card probably was not the ideal, but as we were talking amongst ourselves, if I had that body, I'd be going around. Sure, we even contemplated doing this broadcast shirtless in honor of Mo, but that would really further hurt the ratings over here. So let's talk about a little bit about that. I know a guy that was getting a lot of crap over the last few weeks, despite he has not been on his game, but I thought today he was excellent in terms of like his work rates, being able to control the ball. And he just like felt like he had been so like rested. He just looked energetic. What do you make of his game? Good follow-up, got his goal. Obviously, that helps his confidence as well. But what do you think, Gally?
I thought he played well today. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This man loves a match against Crystal Palace. I think, 10 consecutive matches in a row started against Crystal Palace with a goal, the most ever by any Liverpool player against one team. That's an impressive feat, especially when you're not on top form. I do think we've been hard on him, but I think that's what comes when you're a world-class player not playing at a world-class level. So he showed up today. He did his job. He worked hard. He looked extremely lively down the left with Tsimikas, especially in the first half. Good little interchanges. They look like they have a good synergy together, even though they haven't played much, which is something I love to see because that means it's happening on the training pitch. And I think it also means that Mane is kind of feeling his feet. And he could have had a couple more. And he also tried to set up Mo for beauty. So I really think it was a very positive performance by Mane today. And it's a step in the right direction. I'd love to see him have the entire Norwich match off midweek and just keep training hard and getting ready for next week and then the Champions League second leg the following midweek.
Is that what you think it is, Paul? Like the expectations or the standard has been set so high that the moment he does not meet that standard, people start talking. We just went by a week where people were scolded for criticizing or not being happy with Divock, and like that we should be thankful for what he did like a couple of years ago. And then you see the same people just pounding on Mane for his performances. Is it just like the bar was set so high? It's his fault for setting the bar that high, or what?
I don't think so. I mean, moral grandstanding aside, because I've got my home like other rant on that situation. But like, I think for me, like if you watch Mane, like he has struggled significantly in 4 or 5 games. Like in terms of the entire team, like his performances haven't been bad by his standard. They've been bad by the entire team standard, which, is relatively high, obviously. But I think if you look at him, and I don't know what happened this week, because to me, he hasn't really gotten a ton more rest than he'd normally get between match weeks if it was like a Saturday to Sunday or a Saturday to Saturday game, right? But for me, the thing with him and Mo, and any really advanced attacking player, is you're set up by your first touch, right? And his first touch has been off for a number of weeks, and he had a good part of last year. And I put a lot of that down to fatigue. When players are legged, that's usually the first sign is their first touch is really bad. And it sets up the rest of their sort of movement play. The other thing is like he's been in his own head for weeks. Like, and today, for whatever reason, he looked like a player that was back to playing on instinct and actually enjoying the game instead of like, receiving it and focusing on you could literally watch him think through the process. And that's a problem for players. And so I don't know what happened psychologically. I don't know what happened physically, because I think both of those things have been out of whack. And today they came together, and let's hope it continues.
Yeah, we talked about this in the past. I think especially for a player like Mane, it's very bad, who just is very dangerous because he is so unpredictable. And when he's thinking through, like you're saying, like if he's thinking through what he's gonna do, that kind of like takes that away from his game, and he ends up becoming predictable because he's thinking about stuff. But Overall, if you look at the first half, I wanted to go to one moment that I thought, I mean, let's face it, like going back to what Cosgrove was saying, I mean, Palace did have their chances. Just some poor decision making on their part, or not hitting the open person at the right time and things like that, which, thank God for that. But that situation with Costas and Benteke, uh, I was actually really worried about that because I thought VAR could have possibly given that one. The initial Konate Benteke one, not Konate, and I think it was Zaha, right? The first one where I thought Zaha went down way too easy and there was no way. But let's face it, we've seen that those given, and that was a penalty that would not be overturned by VAR because you could not make that call. So I thought we got those calls going our way. But what did you guys think about that? Benteke Costa situation. Gally, let's start with you because I always think of it like, what would we think if it was the other way around? And I feel like if that was like a free kick or something like that, and if somebody did that to Van Dijk as he's going towards the back post, we'd be upset. It looked incidental, but at the same time, like he kind of knew that, hey, I'm not gonna get there. I'll just do it like this, and then Benteke obviously made a meal of it. But
if Czech Kayate had done that to Mo, we would have had 100 posts asking for a penalty, right? Let's just be real. With all that being taken into account, in the way they're calling right now, tangling the legs and actual contact so far through 5 match weeks, that wasn't a penalty in 2021 in the Premier League. And I think it might have been one of the few good times Bobby Madley made a decision. Because I will say this, after 90 minutes, I believe that Bobby Madley must be in the bottom third of match officials that are calling Premier League matches. He missed 2 or 3 opportunities on both sides to hand out yellow cards that might have actually stopped the kind of the cheekiness and the kind of cut downs. I thought Palace was chopping down players. I thought Gallagher escaping that game without a yellow card was absolutely crazy. And let's be honest, I think if VAR was going to get involved in anything, it would have been hard to overturn the call. But if you actually are going to call that foul against Jota and place that ball where you do, he came from behind him, and therefore part of that foul has to be on the line. How is that not a penalty? I don't think it was a foul in the first place. But when I saw that, I was more worried that VAR may say that foul occurred right on the line, which in turn makes that a penalty. So for me, I just thought Bobby Madley was terrible all day on both sides, even from how he handled stoppage of play, extra time. I just, England has a problem because they have literally 2 or 3 officials that are actually worth the quality of the play that happens in the league. So I really think that's as much a problem. But I don't think that was a penalty.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just almost like too fast for them. I think the main issue comes, especially with this, we're going to let it go and play it out thing, is the inconsistency that happens. I think we talked about this in the last podcast. It's just like, you look at one thing on one side and one thing on the other side. I thought there was a moment in the first half, I think it was Hendo, that just had like it was Thiago. It was a vintage Thiago tackle. I think it was on Zao or somebody to stop a counter, or Ayo.
Oh.
I think it was Ayo actually. And, I thought that would have been an easy yellow, and a bunch of like Gallagher tackles, like the one where he hits Henderson from behind. There were like so many of them that it's like amazing that there are now cars coming out for that. What did you make of the refereeing overall, Paul?
I mean, I don't think I had as big of a problem with it as Gally did, just because that's the way it's been ref this year. Is there some inconsistency? Yeah, but this is like this year is for the old timers, man. Like if you wanted to see how ball was played 15, 20 years ago, you got it this year, like this is like old school English football. And I personally hate it. Like there was another one at the end of the game on Curtis Jones from behind, it's just like, those are the tackles I want to see gone. If that penalty would have been called, I would not have been surprised because that's what I've been wanting to see. So the fact that they didn't call it at least means they're being somewhat consistent. Gallagher is frustrating for me because he's a really bright young talent, but he's such a cheating little shit, man. He is the biggest diver since Ashley Young. And it's every single match. The one on Jota on the edge of the box is actually really smart. Like he feels him coming and he turns his body to shield the ball, knowing that Jota is going to go through him at the last minute. So not a foul for me. Super smart. That's on the ref to sort it. He didn't. For me, like, the amount of stuff that they let go, it's dangerous, but at the same time, it's hard when you've got players like Gallagher and Zaha that are always in the mix and always simulating. Like, it's hard to call it. And like for me, like I'm surprised that Gallagher didn't get booked just for simulation every single match, but like that's just is part of his game. So yeah, it's a tough one to call. I would love to see it tighten up a little bit, just so we don't see more players hurt. But I don't know, tough one. It's weird. Gallagher doesn't get a yellow. Milner doesn't get a yellow. Like it's crazy. Costas does. Like I don't know.
Milner not getting a yellow was shocking because I thought the moment we saw the matchup and as the game was going, and he did have a lot of fouls.
I will say his most legitimate shout for a yellow was on Gallagher, and I think the ref looked at that and was like, "Meh." Kid probably deserves that one. It's like Zaha, Zaha Tambaga getting into it in the Tottenham game. It's like you're not going to call that because like.
And that's the thing, they keep talking about Zaha, he gets fouled so much. Well, yeah, because he takes down two people at all times, hangs on to the ball too long, and that's probably
he does the Neymar thing.
Yes, I mean that's why I think his price is kind of like overinflated. I think another like a big team would have gone after him if it was a bit more reasonably priced, but with some of the negatives that come with him, I don't know if it's worth the risk of having him in there. I mean, he's a great player by all means. And if you don't crowd him, I mean, if you leave him one-on-one with anybody, I think he would cause a big problem. We did a great job of crowding him, especially Mo. Like I say, I don't remember seeing Mo track back this far back, at least this many times, being able to cover the cuts back so Miller can cover the line and stuff like that. So I thought they did excellent there. So let's talk about midfield real quick. And probably the only downside of the game was seeing Thiago come out hurt. And this is the midfield that, we've been talking about for a couple of weeks, right? Like this is the ideal trio and stuff like that. What did you think, Gally? I mean, hopefully Thiago's injury is not too serious, but is this still the ideal trio for a home game from what you saw today?
I thought they played well today. I don't think they were doing anything different or magical. I didn't see that much of an improvement over earlier in the season at times when you would see, the match where Keita started with Henderson or when we had Elliott in there. So I still think that they were the three-man engine that Liverpool needs to go. I think we'll get to the wonder strike, I'm sure, by the substitute who came on for Thiago and what that might mean for his confidence and what he brings to the midfield a little different. And I really start to question as Thiago gets older that his role may not be the game-changing, tactic-changing super substitute, because the more he does play, the more he picks up some small muscle injuries and things that keep him out for matches. People forget he never was fit or available for more than 25 consecutive games in his entire time at Bayern. So he missed a lot of match time. And they had lots of rotation, which, maybe we're going to start to see a little bit of a Premier League, Champions League swing on the rotating of the lineups. I don't think we're going to see 35 starts between all competitions from Thiago. So I think hopefully it was more of a precaution, but it's always scary to see a player of his status know he can't go anymore and just call himself off immediately. So we'll have to wait and hear what it is and how bad.
Yeah, the way he walked off down the tunnel did not look very promising. And let's hope it's not like something like too serious. Because, man, I mean, his control of the midfield, the pace, the ball movements is unreal. The thing that I find odd is, I mean, he's been, last year we were like, okay, like people are not used to it and stuff. Still to date, this guy has been with the team for a long time. He's at practice and stuff. I still feel like the players on the pitch do not expect some of his passes or like see what he's seeing, because there was a ball in the first half that he sent to Mo I mean, actually, that ball is paced perfectly, but Mo was expecting it to the feet. You know, like sometimes when you play with somebody a lot, you kind of know they want it ahead of them, they want to their feet, they want it to their right, whatever it is, you know, and you kind of pass accordingly because you know that. It's just, I find it odd as I watch that people are still not used. And at times he threads those balls through, and his teammates are kind of like shocked that he did that and he got that through. But he is such a key part. But let's do talk about the positive, I guess, that came out of that injury, if you want to call it that. And it's, I mean, another opportunity for this guy. And let's hope, you know, we talked about him, like I think it was like last post match in terms of like what he brings and stuff like that. Bickler, could this be the breakthrough moment? Just his reaction after that goal said a lot by itself.
Yeah, so I want to get to Naby. I want to get two things on Thiago really quickly because I think you both made good points. The purchase of Thiago, to me, because the fact that we let Genie go indicates to me that he was originally designed and purchased to be the Genie replacement. However, I agree with Gally. I think that, you know, the reality of that is that we're going to start to see him used more as a substitute, which really highlights the importance of the Naby situation. You know, like I think that's a really, really critical part of how this season unfolds. As to your point about Thiago's passing, I completely agree. To me, Thiago, it's a philosophical thing for me with him. Like, you're right. Our forward line is used to getting balls played to their feet. Thiago, to use an American expression, to me, he plays like a quarterback. He puts the ball into a spot. So he's playing to spots on the field that he wants you to go to, right? Just like a quarterback would drop back and throw it to a section of the field that you're supposed to run under. That's how he plays. And, you know, it is amazing with all that training. They haven't sort of sorted that. But I wouldn't change that with him, though. And I don't think he can change it. I think that's what makes him unique and makes him very good. So if we can get those things together with fitness, I think it'll be fine. Now, given his history, I fully expect to see him be out. I would not be surprised 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what it is. You know, but just it wouldn't surprise me. In terms of Naby, like, I'm trying to think of seeing somebody score that I felt more like a sense of joy and relief at the same time than when he scored today. Not just because of who it was, but like how he scored it. Like, that's got to be so good for him in terms of building his confidence, because we all know the qualities there, right? He's a different player. He's almost like the counter to Thiago, where Thiago likes to play that ball into space. Naby likes to have that ball at his feet and bring it into a danger spot and either unleash it from distance or play it to somebody's feet once he's drawn defenders in. So it's a really unique sort of situation. And to VJ's point, to winning the league, an inform and a fit Naby in our side is almost more important than any other player in that midfield, because he brings something really unique that nobody else brings. Because we know that Verge can hit the big switch. We know that Hendo can thread balls through, and that Hendo can, you know, hit it from range, maybe in a different way than Thiago does it. But like, Naby's the guy that can put it on his foot, take on 5 or 6 people, draw people off Mane and Mo, and dump it into a spot, which is really easy for Jota and Mo and players that are instinctually goal scorers to get to. So, like, I think his development and his form is critical to the success going forward. And, like, I really hope that this is just the beginning of him kicking on, right? And then we've said that. It feels like we've said that for 18 months now.
And that's a good point. I mean, you look at the bench today, actually the last couple of games, I feel like maybe we're getting more comfortable with the quality that we have, and we've known these players a lot longer. But, I mean, it is good to have options coming off the bench that's quality. I thought Curtis did well coming off the bench as well. Divac's 32nd appearance, I don't know. And those are like moments where, you know, probably could have gotten an extra 5 minutes under Divac if you wanted to and stuff like that. But what do you make of like Naby's performance, Gally?
I thought he was bright and lively from the time he came on. I don't think it was just the wonder goal either. He had 2 other shots on target, including one that was saved low, and I thought Mo might get in and get his second after it. So, you know, I thought Naby was good overall. every time he plays, he seems to get a little bit more comfortable playing on that left-hand side with Mane. And, I thought his expression after the goal was perfect. That was a worldie. He could have run to the corner, ran into the cop. He could have taken his shirt off, and he didn't. It was almost like he was calm and collected, almost to look at his teammates and be like, I told you, I could show you I have this in me. And to the crowd, like, I'm not going to get overexcited because this is like step one on betting in and being more a piece of this squad and have a focal point and a role. And, hopefully this is, the start of something good. And I agree with Paul. I thought, or it was you that said it to me, Gina. I agree. Cujo came on and was bright. I think having more of those options, and let's be honest, if Bobby's fit today, he or Jota comes off the bench.
Yeah. Not
Divock. And if Matip isn't being totally rested to protect Jurgen from himself, he's sitting on that bench instead of Phillips. Robertson's on that bench. Nico's on that bench. So this squad is pretty deep when you look at it, that they didn't have to fill that bench with 4 18-year-olds with numbers in the 70s that were never going to see the pitch.
Yeah, I think, like, going back to Bickler's point, in terms of like seeing, like, having an extra level of joy seeing someone specific score. And I think it was more like the way he scored it as well. But last time I remember that is Henderson's goal away at Southampton. Like, where I was like, because it was somebody that was getting, like, that needed it. Yeah. That was getting a lot of criticism and stuff like that. And yeah, I think especially the way the goal came to, it wasn't just like a tap in or something like that. It was a shot that, a confident player would take, I guess, even to give that a shot. Obviously, the scoreline helps as well. I don't know if he's having a swing at that, if it's like tied and we're trying to get a goal in, if he plays it a bit safer. But yeah, seeing that goal go in, you could almost see it like as the ball was coming that I'm like, yes, make this happen. It happens. I think that's going to be huge. Let's hope Bickler's, I don't know where the optimistic Bickler went, but the pessimistic 6 to 8 weeks forecast over there. Can we have the positive Bickler back, or
we kind of did,
but only for Monday nights, or what?
You know what? I know absolutely nothing about the injury. It's just me saying that, like, if they come out and say that, it's not going to be shocking. He made it, like, for all we know, he's going to be back next week. I don't know. Like,
it could have been a cramp. And he just couldn't stand on it, and they didn't want him to even chance it or risk it. We don't know until we hear. The one thing I would say, to Paul's point earlier about the differences in the dribbling into space and the driving at players and taking on defenders, to me, what Naby brings at his highest level right now is what we were so excited about from Ox. That wonderful first half performance against City in the opening leg of the quarterfinals of the Champions League 2 years ago with the goals. The shooting from outside the box, the driving at players, the dribbling through their midfield. And I don't know that there's another player, outside of a fit and firing Ox, which we haven't seen since the injury, other than Naby, that has that in his locker. And Cujo has a little bit of that too. And I think that's the excitement I have about how they transform the midfield, or even playing in a pseudo front three role position, that I think that it adds a different layer for us and will really make, I think, us move to the next level, especially from the talent standpoint in the midfield. And that was a really great point. So it's kind of
we always talk about a plan B, right? I mean, like, when teams go 8 in the box and they stack 4 and 4 and make us break them down, like, we always talk about, like, we're just pinging balls in from the side. We should be having shots from distance. And yeah, that's great. And some people talk about Thiago's, like, vision as breaking down that, and that's great. But to me, like, the way that I was taught and the way that I've always seen it, it's the most effective way to break down banks of 4 is to actually dribble at it and pull defenders up into it. Make somebody go to the ball and pull that out of position, because once a player leaves his home spot, sat back in, it leaves a spot for another player to move into, or it draws another defender to cover that area. So, like, he's going to be super effective if we need that plan B, and he's back to his best. That's just, to me, that is the most effective plan B.
I think that's like the biggest difference that I see when you look at how Thiago plays and how Keita plays. I feel like Thiago, like 85-90% of the time, he's going to look to do a quick pass, look up the other side and pass it that way, move the ball around and stuff like that. And then, so when he does suddenly do that shoulder drop and turn, it's very effective because it's done very rare. He doesn't do it all the time. I feel like it's kind of like the opposite with Keita. He's looking to dribble first sometimes and take players on, which is good in a way, as long as the rest of the team plays accordingly, kind of like how we talked about, having like Milner and how we kind of, like adjusted our playing style there. But I mean, it's a huge win. Like I say, just a clean sheet on top of it again. And can we talk a bit about Ellison as well? I mean, this dude, I think he gets overlooked, not only because of the saves he does, but let's face it, a lot of these games, and I mean a lot of these games where it's going 0-0 for the longest time, if you have somebody else back there, we might fall behind. And now you're talking about a totally different game. His anticipation, playing that sweeper keeper at times, let's talk about him first real quick. What do you say, Gally? I mean, he was amazing again today.
Yeah, I would argue that if the game had ended 1-0, how it looked like it may for a long period into the second half before Mo got that beautiful finish, I think he would have been the man of the match from the playing standpoint of the gigantic big paw he gets on the Zaha chip in the first half to push off the post is, a world-class save in itself. The positioning on the two Zaha attempts in the second half early, and then the sweeping up for both Konate once and Van Dijk once with big mistakes and just kind of playing their men into positions of trouble, I thought was great. And, all we talk about is Ederson, the ball at his feet, all these different keepers, right? And then he springs Mo once again late in the second half. It seems like nothing, but it was when Crystal Palace was starting to put pressure on the box, and he picked off one of those balls, sent Mo all the way down the pitch. Mo brought it down. The defender kicks it out, and all of a sudden we have a throw in. The entire field has changed, and we take a minute off the clock. And those types of things, I wasn't a keeper. I'm 5'6". I wasn't, or 5'8". I wasn't that's how I'm lying. I'm 5 foot. I said what I said the first time is probably truth, and the second is probably on my driver's license. But, I played up the pitch and kicked people and scored goals and was scrappy. And, that was my role for my squad. But what Alisson does with his feet and just his overall calmness that he brings to everyone in front of him, I think is completely overlooked. And I truly believe he's the best goalkeeper in the world. And I honestly don't believe it's that close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to be biased, but I feel like that too. I think the key stops he makes, I mean, I think they're both, like, when you compare him to like probably Ederson, like in terms of, the ball on their feet, I think they're pretty close in terms of like how they handle that. I just think he makes so many key saves to keep us in the game, and that high line puts a lot more pressure on Alisson compared to Ederson, which, after all that begging, City couldn't still fill the stadium, and they end up losing points against Southampton at home, which is another good part of the day. Hopefully, as we're talking, then we'll probably tune into ourselves after this podcast. Hopefully, Everton will lose as well, and then we'll go from there. But is there a score update there, Gally? I see you, Pete.
It's 0-0, but interesting. Pickford not in the lineup at all. So Begovic is in net for Everton, whether he's injured or COVID issue or something. I didn't see any reports, but, that's got to be concerning for Everton, because sneakily, Benitez and Everton have actually had a good start to this campaign, and they have a run of fixtures. They might put up a couple more results, but I still feel like they'll drop off because they just can't score goals, and, well, they suck.
Yeah, like Bickler says, Everton is like me in fantasy football. It's just great in the beginning, September, and then the shit just goes downhill. Kind of like it started today. I think most scoring helps the cause. But so let's wrap it up with that, because he was my pick for man of the match was Mo. Not only because of the goal, sets up the first goal, but I thought his movements, like you mentioned, Gally, like him kind of like holding the ball when we needed to, and like getting the fouls, and more importantly, his helping down the right-hand side. That right side, I was concerned when the game started, like we talked about with the lineup with Milner, Hendo, and Mo, and that right side worked unbelievably. Like the understanding between them and the movement and stuff gave Crystal Palace a lot of problems. Bickler, who is your man of the match?
Yeah, I agree with you. I go Mo. I mean, they look like they were bailing out water on the right side, on that right side with the spoon. I mean, he looked like he was going to score every time he had it, and they were just a last ditch tackle away from saving it. I thought Mo was incredibly dangerous. He was a handful the entire game, and yeah, the work tracking back was a thing of beauty. I love seeing him. I love seeing the attacking guys roll their sleeves up and get back in the midfield and do some dirty work. So that was awesome.
Gally?
We can all sit here and gush about Mo's performance. I think I kind of did earlier without even knowing I was picking him as man of the match. I think you'd have to give it to him. If I were going to just throw a couple names out of guys that played really well and did some good things, again, I thought Costas has proven that he is an offensive weapon and can move forward. Also, can we all be honest and fair here? No one, and this is sacrilegious to say, but his corners are pretty much perfect and on a dime every single time. And I'm not saying that Trent shouldn't be taking corners when they play together, but when you need a left-footed ball coming in, there is no drop-off now when he comes in, when it comes to the delivery into the box from the wing or the corner, which I think is a great sign for a kid who we all had questions about, especially me. And just a shout-out to Konate. He was a little shaky at times in the first half. He had a couple loose touches there. He almost set Zaha in, but a couple of those balls he played into the front three in the second half as he got more and more confident. I think we do have, if Virgil van Dijk is a Rolls Royce, Konate might be the Maybach just rolling up in and taking up even more room in the garage because he is a mountain of a man. And I think he's going to be something really fun to watch as we go forward.
Yeah, Bickler is rooting for like situational substitutions where we can just bring Costas in, right?
Yeah, just sub them in for corners. Like we can get that rule past the Premier League. We'll never lose a title again.
We just got to become that team
over there by the corner post.
We have to become the team who figures out how to break the concussion rule so we can get guys subbed in and back in.
Can you imagine Costas just roaming the sideline with like a folding chair? Like, he kind of like moves down and camps out, waits for the corner, steps in, zings, pings it in.
The ball boy. He could be the ball boy that just runs and then just runs in, takes quick corners, and then basically flops out and switches as he has to go back to defend. If only the rules worked this way and it was hockey.
He just walks in all.
I think it's been great, though, because his performance enables Robo to get some freaking much-needed rest because I think we've kind of like run him into the ground over the last since he freaking took over from Moreno. I think I don't think he's ever come off. So losing Costas last year kind of hurt that. I think this will be great for Robo when he comes back, too, because he's a guy that plays with energy. So rest is very important. And like his relationship that he has up there with Mane and stuff. And going back to what you were saying, Gally, I thought it was really good to see Costas kind of have that relation with the Mane too in terms of like movement and stuff like that. But well, gentlemen, I'm sure on Monday's podcast at 7:00 Central, if all the listeners want to join us, I'm sure we'll look a lot more closer at this game, look at some of the numbers and stuff like that. Any parting thoughts, Bickler?
No, it's going to be positive, and that feels weird, so I'll just leave it.
Yeah, let's just keep it. Save that for Monday, because otherwise you're going to be crabby on Monday's podcast. So, Gally, what do you have?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of roll the same with Paul. All these poor people have to look and listen to us for another hour on Monday. So to make sure we don't have to regurgitate any of the info and they don't have to hear anything from us again. It's a great win. Hopefully everyone has a great rest of their day. Everton loses, and we can all rejoice Monday night and look at where we are on the table, possibly at top.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse for the listeners, let's face it, and we could go with our more idea of, going shirtless podcast. But hey, so that's something to be thankful for. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining me, and thank you all those for joining and commenting. Hopefully you guys will join us this Monday, 7:00 Central for our podcast recording. Let's go watch Everton lose, people.